He told me he wanted a perfect bride. Not loyal, not loving, not supportive. Perfect. And the moment I realized what his version of perfection meant, I understood something terrifying. He didn't want a partner. He wanted property. So I walked away. And the day I disappeared from his life was the day I became truly unreachable. I met Adrian at a charity gala 2 years ago. He was handsome, sharp suit, expensive watch, flawless charm, the kind of man who seemed to glide through social rooms like he belonged to a higher species. People whispered about his family's wealth, their legacy, their spotless reputation. He was the kind of man other men envied and women dreamed about. So when he asked for my number, it felt flattering in the most innocent, dangerous way. Our first dates were like scenes stolen from a film. Rooftop dinners, quiet jazz bars, long drives along the coastline. He treated me like I was the only person in the world who mattered. Looking back, that was my first mistake, mistaking intensity for affection. But at 25, I couldn't see the difference. 3 months into the relationship, he started using a new phrase. "You're perfect." It sounded sweet at first, almost unreal. Who doesn't want to be called perfect? But slowly, the word began to suffocate me. "You'd look perfect if you wore your hair up. You should order a salad. That would be perfect for tonight. You don't need to laugh so loudly. Perfect brides don't talk much in public. Try a softer tone. Perfect women don't sound confrontational. That dress shows too much skin. That dress covers you too much. That lipstick is too bold. Are you trying to look like other women? That's not perfect." Every day, perfection became a moving target. Every day, I felt myself shrinking. The more he guided me, the more he erased me. The first time I visited his family home, the warning signs multiplied. His mother scanned me from head to toe, as though she were inspecting a product. "Pretty," she said, "but we can fix the rest." Fix? His sister whispered behind me, "She's too independent. Adrian never likes that." His father said nothing, but took a long breath, the kind people take when they are disappointed. None of this hurt me as much as Adrian's reaction. He didn't defend me. He didn't reassure me. He simply smiled and said, "She'll adjust." Adjust, as if I were a piece of furniture being moved around his life, until I fit the aesthetic, as if my personality were an inconvenience, as if my dreams, opinions, identity, everything were negotiable. The turning point came on a Sunday morning. We were sitting in his living room, reviewing wedding magazines. He had circled dresses, hairstyles, even the poses he wanted in the photos. I hadn't been asked what I wanted. Not once. Finally, I gently said, "Can we plan the wedding together? I'd like to choose some things too." He paused. Not the kind of pause that comes from listening, the kind that comes from disbelief. Then calmly, he closed the magazine and said the sentence that changed everything. "Darling, I thought you understood. A perfect bride knows her role. And your role is simple: look beautiful, stay quiet, and follow my lead." The room felt colder. My heartbeat felt louder. My hands trembled on my lap. He wasn't joking. His face carried no humor, only entitlement. "Adrian," I said slowly, "you don't want a wife, you want a doll." He leaned back, unfazed. "Is that a problem?" That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not violently, but quietly, like a hairline fracture that finally reaches its breaking point. He continued speaking, his tone soft but chilling. "Marriage is easier when the woman understands her place." Her place. Those words echoed in my skull. Not long after, he pulled out a list, an actual written list titled, "Things to Improve Before the Wedding." Improve, as if I were a malfunctioning device. The list included: change wardrobe, smile more, speak less, lose 5 pounds, learn proper dinner etiquette, avoid emotional reactions, stop hanging out with unrefined friends, delete social media, wear neutral colors, be available at all times. Laughable, terrifying, dehumanizing. I stared at the paper, as if it were a certificate proving my value in his eyes. Then I realized, this wasn't love, this was grooming. Still, I stayed silent. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. People think the moment of awakening is loud. But it is. It's quiet, calm, final. Because the moment you truly see someone's character, you no longer fear them. You simply detach. And I detached. The next week, I acted normally. Smiled. Agreed. Nodded. Because I needed time. Not to change, but to escape. I replayed every conversation we ever had. Every moment he criticized me. Every time he rewrote my choices. Every time he shaped me into something smaller. And then I realized, I wasn't becoming perfect. I was becoming invisible. 2 days before our engagement party, he said, "Just remember, once we're married, everything will be done my way." I smiled, not because I agreed, but because I already knew. He would never get the chance. I didn't leave with chaos. I didn't leave with screaming. I didn't leave with drama. That was the first thing I promised myself. If a man wanted to control me so desperately, then the greatest rebellion would be slipping out of his hands so quietly that he wouldn't notice until I was already miles away, emotionally, physically, and financially. And that plan began with something deceptively simple, acting like the perfect bride he thought he owned. For the next 2 weeks, I followed his rules. Not out of obedience, but out of strategy. I wore the clothes he preferred, the soft beige tones and long sleeves that made me feel like a ghost of myself. I spoke softly when he wanted. I nodded when he criticized. I sat beside him in public like a well-trained accessory, and in that silence I watched him, observed him, understood him, because sometimes escape requires a level of patience that love does not. Behind the scenes, my preparations began. I created a new email, a new bank account, a new phone line. I scanned all my important documents, passport, certificates, contracts, and uploaded them to a secure cloud storage. I changed passwords. I saved money. I informed my workplace that I might need a few days off soon. Not once did I mention Adrian's name. People often think leaving is about strength, but in truth, it's about planning. I also reconnected with the people he slowly pulled me away from. My best friend Mia, who once said, "He scares me in ways I can't explain." My cousin Eva, who noticed how quiet I had become. My mentor, who observed how drained I looked during online meetings. I didn't tell them everything, but I told them enough. I might need a place to stay, keep your phone near. Their responses were immediate, supportive, fierce, protective. I wasn't alone anymore. Meanwhile, Adrian grew more confident because he mistook silence for submission. The more obedient I seemed, the more he relaxed. He started planning the engagement party like it was a royal ceremony. Golden invitations, white roses, a string quartet. He controlled the guest list and seating arrangements. He dictated the dress I would wear. His mother visited twice to teach me how to move gracefully. His sister checked my closet and said, "You should throw these childish clothes away." I smiled through all of it, though every second made my skin itch. One night, while sitting in his living room, he placed a velvet binder in front of me, a binder, as if our marriage were a corporate agreement. Inside were rules, schedules, lifestyle expectations. He had written, "My wife must prioritize family image above personal preference." I kept my face still, but inside, my escape solidified into certainty. The final push came a week before the engagement party. We were out for dinner, and the waiter accidentally spilled water near my chair. I jumped slightly, it was cold. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud. But Adrian's hand gripped my wrist under the table, tight enough to leave red marks. "Perfect brides don't flinch," he whispered. In that moment, I didn't hear him. I heard every woman who had ever been controlled, silenced, reshaped. I saw myself at 40, shrunken, tired, voiceless. I felt the weight of a future that didn't belong to me. And that night, I finalized everything. Over the next days, I packed slowly, carefully, one item at a time. Only what mattered, only what I needed. Clothes, documents, laptop, sentimental items that connected me to my real life, not the life he tried to manufacture. I packed when he wasn't home. I hid boxes at Mia's apartment. Every day, my presence in his apartment became lighter, thinner, like I was fatting out of the walls. 2 days before the engagement party, Adrian asked, "Are you excited?" I smiled, of course. He kissed my forehead, satisfied. He didn't see the suitcase, hidden under the bed. The night before the engagement party, I couldn't sleep. Not out of fear, but out of anticipation. There is a specific kind of electricity that runs through your spine when you know you're about to reclaim your life. My heart beat fast, but my mind was calm. I rehearsed my steps over and over again, not for him, but for me. At dawn, I got dressed quietly, not in the dress he chose. In jeans, a simple t-shirt, a jacket, clothes that felt like me. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My face looked different, sharper, stronger, awakened. I wasn't running, I was rising. I took one last look at the room where he tried to shrink me, and then I walked out. Not as his bride-to-be, not as his controlled creation, but as myself. My phone buzzed the moment I stepped outside. "Mia, I'm waiting around the corner." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I walked straight into the morning air and felt the first breath of freedom after months of suffocation. As we drove away, she asked, "Do you want to block his number now?" "Not yet," I said quietly. He deserves to know he didn't lose a bride. He lost access to the life he tried to own. We reached her apartment and I finally relaxed. She helped me bring my bags inside. But before we closed the door, I said, "Wait." I glanced back at the empty hallway. The silence felt like a border between past and future. Then I closed the door. That afternoon, I sent Adrian a single text. "I will not attend the engagement party. Do not contact me again." He called instantly. I didn't answer. He texted. I didn't respond. The messages started polite, then confused, then angry, then desperate. I muted the notifications and placed the phone face down. For the first time in a long time, the silence belonged to me. By evening, I received a message from his sister. "You're making a mistake." I almost laughed. I responded once, plainly. "No," I corrected one. That night, Mia made tea, and we sat on the couch in her small living room. She looked at me and said, "You look alive again." And she was right. I felt alive, free, untouchable. For the first time in years, my life wasn't being edited, shaped, or judged. It was mine completely, irreversibly mine. But I didn't know then that Adrian wouldn't fade quietly. He wasn't done trying to control the narrative. He wasn't done trying to reclaim what he believed belonged to him. And soon, his attempt to win me back would push me into a transformation he could never predict. Because the girl he tried to shape into a perfect bride was gone forever. In her place stood a woman he would never be able to reach again. The morning after I ended the engagement, the world looked different, quieter, almost too quiet. For the first time in months, I woke up without a list of his demands echoing in my head. No instructions about how I should dress. No reminders about how I should behave. No critiques about how I should improve myself. Just silence. It felt strange, unsettling even, like stepping into a house you once lived in but no longer recognize. Freedom has a peculiar sound to it. Light, fragile, and full of uncertainty. I spent hours sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the unused wedding planner on my desk. The perfectly organized pages, venue details, guest lists, flower arrangements, felt like artifacts from a life that was never truly mine. Every page carried a memory of a decision he overrode, a comment he corrected, a preference he replaced with his own. I closed the book gently, as if closing a coffin. I wasn't mourning the end of a relationship. I was mourning the years I had spent shrinking myself to fit into someone else's blueprint. The calls began before noon. His name flashed across my phone again and again, vibrating with the urgency of someone who finally realized he was losing control. I didn't answer. I couldn't. A part of me feared that if I heard his voice, even once, it would pull me back into that familiar cycle of apology and manipulation. He always knew exactly what to say to make me doubt myself. Emotional architects like him build cages with words, not bars. By the time the messages started pouring in, they had shifted from pleading to angry to guilt-tripping. "You're throwing away everything we built. You're being dramatic. You'll never find someone who understands you like I do." I stared at those messages with a hollow kind of disbelief. Understanding me? He never even saw me. He saw only the version he wanted me to be. But the worst part wasn't his anger. It was my family's reaction. They had adored him. To them, he was charming, stable, responsible, the kind of man any woman would be lucky to marry. When I told them I had ended the engagement, the disappointment in their eyes felt sharper than any insult he had thrown at me. They didn't know the man behind closed doors, the one who micromanaged my clothes, my routines, my friends, my ambitions. They knew only the polished facade he performed for the world. My mother was the first to question me. "Sweetheart, are you sure? He's a good man. Engagements are stressful. Maybe you're overthinking." Overthinking, that word had become my enemy. Anytime I expressed discomfort or insecurity, he accused me of overthinking. Anytime I questioned his decisions, he said I was being too sensitive. And here it was again, echoing back at me through the voice of someone I loved. That's the thing about subtle manipulation. It doesn't just distort your mind. It distorts the perceptions of everyone around you. My breakdown arrived quietly. That evening, while sitting alone in my living room, the weight of everything I had endured collapsed onto my chest. The tears came slowly at first, as if my body wasn't sure it was allowed to cry. But once they started, they didn't stop. I cried for the version of myself I had abandoned. I cried for the dreams I had postponed. I cried for the confidence I had lost. But mostly, I cried because I realized, perhaps for the first time, that I had been engaged to a man who loved control more than he ever loved me. At some point, my phone buzzed again. I ignored it at first, but curiosity eventually pulled me in. It was a message from him. "I talked to your family. They're worried about you. They want us to work this out." My breath caught, so that was why my parents were suddenly so insistent. He had gone to them. He had told them something twisted, incomplete, polished to make him appear like a patient, forgiving partner dealing with a difficult fiancé. Rage simmered through my body, not fiery but cold, calculated. This wasn't love, this was strategy. Something inside me hardened at that moment. I wiped my tears and stood up. I wasn't going to fight him emotionally anymore. People like him thrived on emotional weakness, on vulnerability, on guilt. He wanted me to play the role of the overwhelmed bride who comes crawling back. But I was done being predictable. The only way to win against someone who weaponizes your emotions is to stop giving them ammunition. The next day, I booked a flight. A one-way ticket to a city I had always dreamed of visiting but never dared to go because he said it was too chaotic, too crowded, not suitable for someone like me. That phrase replayed in my mind. Someone like me. What did that even mean? A woman who obeyed. A woman who conformed. A woman who didn't dare to dream beyond the borders of his comfort. While packing, I found the journal I had hidden at the back of my drawer. Inside were pages filled with the things I had never told anyone, moments when he belittled me, comments he made in the name of honesty, ways he made me feel inadequate while pretending to help me improve. I read those entries slowly, my anger turning into clarity. This wasn't heartbreak. This was liberation disguised as pain. Before leaving for the airport, I sent him one final message. Not emotional, not apologetic, not angry. Just a single sentence that carried the quiet strength I had spent years searching for. I'm choosing myself now. No explanation. No closure. People like him never give closure, so I owed him nothing. When the plane took off, I felt something shift inside me. The city below grew smaller and smaller, just like the version of myself I had left behind. I wasn't running away. I was stepping into a future he never believed I could build without him. He always said I needed guidance, that I wasn't strong enough to make big decisions on my own. But there I was, flying alone, terrified but free. As clouds swallowed the sky outside my window, one thought repeated in my mind. Sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is walk away, before she becomes unrecognizable to herself. And I had finally done it. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have imagined, was that the life waiting for me on the other side of that flight would transform me into someone he could never control, never define, and never reach again. My journey to becoming unreachable had just begun. The first few weeks in the new city were disorienting in the best possible way. Every street felt like an open door. Every cafe felt like a place where I could rewrite myself from scratch. For the first time in years, I walked without feeling observed, without feeling judged, without wondering whether someone would criticize my posture or my clothes or my voice. I blended into the crowd effortlessly, and in that anonymity, I found a kind of power I had forgotten I possessed. I rented a small apartment, nothing glamorous, nothing Instagram-worthy, but it was mine. Every corner felt like a declaration of independence. I cooked only when I wanted to, slept whenever I wished, and wore the clothes I once hid because he thought they made me look immature. I filled the rooms with things I loved. Sunflowers, sketchbooks, books with messy annotations. The kind of life that didn't fit into his curated image of perfection. Slowly, I began rebuilding the dreams I had abandoned. I signed up for workshops, attended networking events, and started freelancing for small companies that valued creativity over compliance. Each project reminded me that I wasn't the fragile woman he had attempted to mold. I was capable, imaginative, and adaptable. And with every bit of progress, a new version of me emerged, one he never believed could exist without him. But the world has a strange way of bringing old ghosts back. One morning, an email arrived from an unknown address. The subject line made my stomach drop. I think we should talk. It was him. 3 months had passed since I left, and I had almost begun to believe he had given up. But men like him don't let go. They wait. They calculate. They return the minute they sense they're losing relevance. I didn't open the email, but I couldn't ignore the flood of emotions it triggered. Anger, fear, disgust, but also something stronger, pride. I wasn't trembling this time. I wasn't debating whether to respond. The woman I had become didn't owe him conversations, explanations, or opportunities to manipulate her again. Days passed, more emails arrived. I miss you. You left without real closure. There are things we should discuss. You're being unfair. By the 6th email, he finally showed his true nature again. You'll regret this. I almost laughed. That sentence once terrified me, but now it sounded like the desperate grasp of a man who realized he had lost the ability to control the narrative. Instead of responding, I built. I poured my energy into a new project, a platform designed to help women share their experiences with controlling partners, emotional manipulation, and invisible abuse. I designed the entire concept from the ground up, channeling everything I had endured, everything I had learned, and everything I wished someone had told me earlier. The platform grew faster than I expected. At first, just a handful of women joined, then dozens, then hundreds. Stories from different countries, different backgrounds, different ages, but the same patterns, the same tactics, the same wounds. We weren't alone. We were never alone. That realization became the foundation of everything I was building. Soon, my platform gained traction among mental health advocates, influencers, and support organizations. Within 6 months, I was invited to speak at panel discussions and virtual events. I wasn't just healing myself, I was helping others do the same. Every message I received, every woman who said, "Your story gave me strength," reminded me of why I had left in the first place. My journey wasn't just a personal rebellion, it had become a force of collective empowerment. Then, sometime during the 8th month of my new life, he found a way to reach my phone number. The call came late at night, long after I had stopped expecting him to show up again. I stared at my ringing phone for a long time, the screen glowing with a number I didn't save but immediately recognized. I didn't answer. But that night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I received a voice message from him. The tone was unfamiliar, shaky, almost afraid. "I saw what you're doing. You're turning into someone I can't even recognize. Just remember, none of this would have happened without me." It took me a full minute to process the absurdity of it. He was trying to take credit for my success, for my healing, for my transformation. It was laughable and tragic, but something inside me snapped into perfect clarity. The reason he kept reaching out wasn't love or regret or longing. It was fear. Because he knew I had become something he couldn't touch, couldn't influence, and couldn't diminish. He feared the woman I had grown into, a woman who no longer needed permission, validation, or approval from anyone, least of all him. So I recorded a message back. My voice was steady, calm, unshaken. "You didn't build any part of who I am today. You tried to break me, and I grew stronger. You tried to silence me, and I built a platform for voices like mine. Whatever you think you contributed to my life ended the moment I walked away. I owe you nothing. Do not contact me again." I didn't wait for a reply. I blocked his number, permanently. The silence that followed was different from the silence on the morning after our breakup. This one wasn't fragile. It wasn't uncertain. It was solid, powerful, earned. It was the silence of someone who had reclaimed her dignity and rewritten her destiny. A year after leaving him, I stood on a stage in front of hundreds of people, sharing my story freely, confidently, unapologetically. Cameras flashed. Applause echoed. My name was displayed on the projector behind me, not as someone's fiancé, not as someone's accessory, not as someone trying to fit into a mold, just me, fully and wholly myself. As I looked out at the audience, I realized something. He had wanted a perfect bride, someone polished, obedient, predictable. Instead, I had become a woman he could never reach, never control, never own. I had become entirely, deliberately, magnificently unreachable. Walking away was not the end of my story, it was the beginning. The moment I chose myself, the universe opened up pathways I never knew existed. And somewhere, far away, he was probably still wondering how the woman he underestimated became the woman who built a life beyond his imagination. But that's the thing about underestimating someone. You don't notice when the person you tried to break learns how to rise.